Yes everyone, welcome to a run through of my lower B rotation, I think it is, that we've got here. You'll see some clips in the background if you want to know the kind of thought process behind these lifts, what I'm doing, etc. Then if you head on over to, I think there's a YouTube short on it, there's definitely a TikTok on it if you want to know. Today we're going to run through some ideas about training and kind of some mistakes that people make, okay? Now we're going to start off and kind of talk about stability and the need for stability and the kind of recent push towards stability that we've seen. Now, a lot of the kind of explanations I'm going to give for training, I'm going to use, analogies. I'm going to use analogies and kind of relate it to nutrition because it's something that people kind of grasp quite well. It's interesting because nutrition is one of those areas where we all seem to kind of agree for the most part. There's a few very weird outliers, but a lot of people tend to have fairly good, concise understanding of like, these things are generally good, these things are generally less good, and generally we want to try and achieve these things and steer away from these things. Now, with training, there seems to be a lot of discourse, and I'm not really sure why. Now, stability. Stability is important, it does play a role. First of all, to be fair, I should probably define what stability is. So, stability within training means exactly like it does in day-to-day terms. Basically, your ability to not falter a rep due to a lack of coordination or that weight kind of pulling you off balance. Being able to continue to progress and make your way through that set while actually training the muscle that you're trying to train and not just kind of fall over or fall out of it or lose an ability to get another rep because of a balance issue. Okay, so that's stability. Now, when we're looking at lifts, there's two main types of lift. You've got internally stabilized and externally stabilized. Externally stabilized basically means that the lift or the setup itself keeps you balanced, okay? So if you think about a lot of machine work, machines tend not to give you too much freedom of movement, which isn't a bad thing or a good thing, it's just what it is. And that means that they're externally stabilized. It's very hard to be unbalanced and to accidentally, muck up your set in that regard. Then you've got internally stabilized. These are lifts, typically more so free weighted, so barbell, dumbbell, etc. But obviously there are a few other exceptions. But typically lifts where the stability demand is placed on you, and you have to be the thing that balances that weight, that balances that load, and has to not falter. Now, these internally stabilized lifts recently have been demonized because they lack stability inherently, and we'll talk about that statement in a second, but it's somewhat true. But they inherently lack a sense of stability because you are the thing that has to produce that stability. And the thought process goes as such, it's that because you're distracted by the need to create that stability, therefore it is a lesser stimulus for growth because you are focused on that, because that is the bottleneck potentially. And also there's some evidence to show that higher amounts of stability allow for greater motor unit recruitment and therefore basically allow you to lift a bit heavier and drive a bit more stimulus, okay? Now, the thing about stability is I kind of want to draw a parallel between it and protein intake. Okay, so yes, up to a point, if you're lacking in either protein intake or stability, adding more is going to be a benefit. So protein intake, generally we leave about 1 gram per pound of body weight per day. Now, that's great. If you're lower than that, absolutely add more. Okay, that is going to benefit you. But once we start to go beyond the point of that, do we see any downsides? Well, to start off with, not inherently. With protein, if we add more, we're not really going to get ourselves too much more growth. However, in the real world, if we start to add more protein, those calories, because protein has calories inherently in it, there's 4 calories per gram if we're just talking pure protein, those calories could be better dictated towards something else. They could be put into carbohydrates to allow you to train better, put more energy into your sets, recover better, generally have a bit more set endurance, or into fats, which have a myriad of health benefits. Yes, there's some energy, but also they are required for the building of cells and make up cell walls, okay? Now back to our kind of initial point with stability. If you are lacking stability, in theory, adding stability is a good thing. Okay, so say for example, if we have a leg extension and you find that kind of as you're going into that full extension, as you're coming towards lockout, your hips start to rise out of the pad, or if you've been following me on Instagram or TikTok, you may have seen that there's a dip machine that I've been doing, and as I go into the dip machine, I kind of get pulled out of the pad, and that's extremely distracting. I'm getting pulled out of my seat, I'm having to kind of fight that a little bit, and that limits my ability to just focus on doing my dips. In those instances, adding stability is something that is going to be a benefit. Now, part of the thing that I want to kind of draw attention to is both of those things are things that you can't really get better at. So with pulling myself down into the seat with dips, the main concern is that the weight is too high, it's above my body weight, and therefore it's just gonna pull me. Okay, same thing with if you do a lat pull down or any kind of pull down without a restraint on your knees, you're just going to get pulled upwards. You ever seen people do, they set up like a cable pull down, they do pull-ups on it? Because if you weigh, let's say you weigh 80 kilos and you put like 90 kilos, 100 kilos on that bar, you'll probably, because it's above your body weight, you're probably going to be able to do pull-ups off it. It's going to move before you do if there's no restraint, if there's no stability. Okay, kind of a similar thing again with leg extensions. When you get to a certain weight, yes, you can pull yourself down on the handles and you can strap yourself in, but it's going to get harder and harder and harder to do that, and that is a distraction. That's something that we can't really develop with time. That's an inherent weight issue. Now, if we look at, say, like a barbell press or a dumbbell press, there is inherent instability. There's internal stabilization that you have to create in order for that lift to be successful, okay? Now, with those things, when you first start off with them, you're gonna be crap at it, you're gonna suck at it. However, there is something called skill, and skill basically, or skill acquisition, is the process of gaining skill, getting better at lifting basically. Okay, it's a really weird word that we basically just mean getting better at that specific lift. Okay, so as much as a dumbbell press is a challenge of your pushing musculature, it's also a challenge of your ability to dumbbell press, and you can improve that. This is why when people first start the gym, they see such rapid strength progressions or newbie gains. It's not really because muscle mass is just being slapped onto their frame, it's because they're just getting better at lifting. They're not used to lifting, they're getting better at it, they're getting better at those specific lifts that they're doing as well. Okay, so as skill is gained, you will get better at stabilizing yourself. If you look at, and this is a great example, I'd encourage you, if you're very skeptical of this video, to go and look at him, Nick Gloff on Instagram. One of the strongest bodybuilders, ridiculous strength. If you look at him barbell press or dumbbell press, if you look at him barbell press, it looks like it's on a Smith machine. If you look at him dumbbell press, it looks robotic. The thing that makes his sets end is not a lack of stability, because he can create that stability. The things that end his set is muscular fatigue. It's failing. It's not having the strength to go on. And so for him, those sets are really good. The thing that people forget about stability is there is a time and a place to add it, and where it's going to be a benefit to your set. There's a time and a place where it's going to get gained anyway, and doing those internally stabilized lifts or unstable lifts, whatever you want to call them, still carries merit and benefit, because they allow you to have greater carryover to those externally stabilized lifts. If you have a dumbbell press or barbell press in rotation, not only are you able to expose yourself to more lifts, which means that your mesos can run longer and you can have more variety to your training, you can also have a bigger pool of lifts you can pick from. But equally, in comparison, from a psychological perspective, those machine presses are going to feel really easy to progress, because having to stabilize that dumbbell and progress it is harder than that machine press. Also, from a joint health perspective, having an ability to stabilize yourself and stabilize high levels of strength is fantastic. A lot of issues that we see from an injury perspective come from people having high levels of strength, but a real inability to actually stabilize joints while producing that strength. And that's why you see people run into like knee, hip, ankle issues when they're squatting or when they're doing leg work or quad work. And it's because a lot of the time they might be doing leg pressing, they might just be doing hack squatting. They're very rarely doing walking lunges, Bulgarian split squats, single leg work, or even just freestanding barbell squats. Everything is stabilized. And so as they're hypertrophying themselves and gaining strength, those joints have muscles surrounding them which are great at producing force, but really poor at directing it and managing it. And that can cause injuries. So in a nutshell, stability is useful up until a point. It's not needed on every lift. It's something that you can gain, and having places where you have stability demands is good from a psychological perspective. It's good from a joint health perspective. It really isn't that big of a concern from a muscle growth perspective over time. And again, it gives you a wider pool of exercises that you can pull from. If all of your pressing is going to be machine pressing, if you don't have a ton of machines at your gym, you're limited. If they break, you're limited. And if you're going to stay at that same gym for a while, there's going to come a time when you're going to have to do some internal stabilization. And when you get to that, if you have that skill built up, you'll be far better at it. You'll be able to train yourself far closer to failure. You'll be less likely to run into joint issues, okay? So I would always encourage a mixture of internally and externally stabilized lifts. If you have any questions, pop them in the comments or head over to my Instagram, Jack_Archer Academy, or my TikTok or YouTube Shorts that you can have a look at as well. If you guys have any questions, pop them there. Thanks for watching. Hopefully the lower B footage was interesting as well. Cheers guys, see ya.